Welcome, everybody, to the 1% podcast. We have a very, very special guest today. Before I introduce her, Sean, Garrett, how you guys doing?
We're good. Happy to be here.
Playing a lot of baseball. Season's almost over, huh?
Yep, almost done. About to jump in with the 16 and 17s. We're ready for summer. Excited for the last couple of tournaments with the younger guys, so we're ready to go.
Awesome. All right, well, without further ado, we've got Dr. Julie Wiernick, owner and sports psychologist at the Texas Center for Sports Psychology. Is that correct?
Yep.
Awesome. And, well, first of all, thanks for visiting with us. I've had the pleasure of knowing you for quite some time. You've always been a good friend. Our kids have gone to school together, played together, but you are much more than just a baseball, soccer, football, tennis mom. You got to do it all. And so much of what we encounter as parents is, hitting lessons and games and so much of the physical. And you deal with the mental aspect of sports. And so what do they say? Is it what, 90-10 or what's the rub there?
Well, everybody says like it's 80% or 90%, but I say it's like 100% because your thoughts and your feelings and your brain is with you all the time. So it's 100% mental and technical, my opinion.
And Garrett, I guess you guys try to teach that all the time. I know during practice and during training, you guys are always trying to implement a little bit of that. Is that what is trying to instill some of that? What led you to Julie and you guys talking?
100%. I mean, everything that we do comes back to the physical, right? And it's something we talk about all the time with when we start seeing guys struggle, we start seeing guys fail. It comes back to like, hey, what are you mentally doing? Like, are you mentally prepared? Are you engaged? Are you looking for the next opportunity? Are you prepared pitch to pitch to make a play? Are you walking up to the plate with an approach? Like, it's everything that we talk about. We want the aggressive baseball player. We want the guy that's honestly almost overconfident in what he does, right? And that he believes in his movements. He goes about it without the fear of failure like we talk about. Because to us, like when we start looking at guys that struggle a lot, it's the dudes that are honestly scared. It's the guys that are frightened. It's the guys that second guess what they do. And that comes back to preparation. It comes back to consistency. But for us, like when me and Julie talked, like it was like, hey, like there's a huge gap right now. There's a huge gap between one, I think parent understanding, but then I think just the baseball world and sports world in general is that there's a huge gap between guys thinking that everything is physical. Mm-hmm. And there's so many parents that get in there and they start seeing their kids struggle. They start seeing their kids fail. And it's like, oh, he needs to go to a hitting lesson. We had a kid last night that I was getting a little frustrated at him, but it was like, he just doesn't get it yet. He was getting so frustrated that he was physically not doing good, but it was the mental barrier that like every time that he had a bad rep, the composure of himself, like he started to pout, like all that stuff led into the next swing. It's like, dude, it's physical, but really at the end of the day, it's you mentally not being there. So that's what we dove into. I got to jump on Julie's podcast and we talked about a lot of the same stuff and honestly just my point of view of what I struggled with. But for us, like the biggest thing is like, hey, we've got to get these guys overconfident. Like we've got to get these guys, even if they're not physically there yet, we've got to get them to believe in themselves.
It's important to know too, like your brain's a powerful tool.
Oh yeah.
Like your brain, your thoughts and your, like you said, overconfidence and your thoughts and feelings are gonna get you to be optimal physically.
Yep.
Right, but if your brain sucks and your mindset gets in the way, like it doesn't matter how good your swing is or how good you are on the mound, like at some point it's gonna haunt you.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the players in the big leagues. I mean, aren't they all amazing?
Yep.
I mean, what separates great is pretty much confidence and chemistry and hard work.
And that's what you talk to anyone. I've listened to people and talked to people that have had the opportunity to play high-level professional baseball, and they say that's the difference between guys in AA and the major leagues, right? Like at that level, at that point, all those guys, they have great bat speed. They can hit balls 500 feet, but the guys that can do it day in and day out, going back to the mental side of it and the preparation and the confidence, that's what gets guys to that next level.
Yeah, 100%.
And Dr. J, you're an athlete, right? You did this at a high level. What, did you have interest in it, throughout your development?
Yeah.
Number one, and then what kind of led you on this journey?
That's a great question. My dad was a great baseball player. He was drafted by the Yankees right before Mickey Mantle. I talked about it. So baseball was kind of like in my blood. I have 2 older brothers, so I was like, that was my favorite sport. That was my best sport. And then, I struggled, I think, with, years ago, we didn't have the hitting coaches, so my dad was my coach. And, I really wasn't so much focused on technique. I don't know if it was, years ago, why, but it was just, now it's a lot more competitive. And yes, you have to train technique. But I was always really, really good. But I knew that I needed to work on my technical level. But I played college softball, and I was a 4-year shortstop. I played pretty much every game for 4 years, primarily at short, University of North Florida in Jacksonville. And, I led the team. I had probably, I think I'm top 4 in assists, like career-wise.
Nice.
I didn't make a lot of throwing errors. I mean, if it was probably a boot, which is going to happen more. That when you make a physical error like a boot in the infield, usually, that's going to happen. It's easier to make a physical error under the ground ball than it is with a throwing error. Throwing error tends to be a little more mental because it's, you're in control and you're into your eye focus and discipline on the target. So my errors are mostly on the ground, which is going to happen. We didn't play on turf a whole lot. We played on a lot of clay. We had rocks. My biggest issue was I wanted it so bad that it was that perfectionism that if I made an error, like I wanted to crawl into a hole. Like I felt like ashamed or embarrassed I made an error. That's the truth. And when I went to college, I was really undecided what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a professional baseball player, but I knew as a woman and 5'5" that wasn't going to happen. So I went in undecided, like most people are, like, what do I want to do with my life? I thought about coaching, but I just didn't know if I wanted the lifestyle of like a college coach and traveling all the time. You know how it's very, very cutthroat. I knew that I loved sports and I love to help people, and I'm funny, I'm likable. And then my junior year, I was getting so frustrated because I'm like, I could be so much better. Like, what the heck is stopping me? Like, what the hell,
Yeah.
And I walked off. I went to my off-campus apartment, and I said, Julie, what the fuck? I literally, sorry, but.
No, it's okay.
And I
Have you
was.
seen the pond?
Go.
Number
Yeah.
1.
And I was like, because I'm an athlete, and I was probably at the time very intimidated, to be quite honest, going to a psychologist, which is. So I was intimidated and kind of nervous about it. And so I go, what's wrong with me? And I had this like profound realization that no matter how much I trained, no matter how great I was going to make a mistake. Like, it is going to happen. And it was like a huge weight. I tell the story all the time, and I still get goosebumps. It was like the biggest weight. I gave myself permission to fail. Like, it was like, I'm going to make a mistake. And then it was crazy because I was diving all over the place. It freed me up. I must have had just 1 or 2 errors the rest of the season. Like, everything just was like an eye-opening experience. And I'm like, wow, like if I can free myself up in like 30 seconds, imagine how many people I can help. Yeah. And so I took some psych courses, and I'm like, do I really want to listen to people's problems? Like, I'm an athlete, like I'm a jock. Like, do I really want to like sit and listen to people talk about, but it was like, you know what? I need to figure out, I need to be a psychologist first, because, and then it was crazy because in my career, I'm like, I only want to work with like the best athletes and champions. And I saw myself with MLB and going to the Olympics. But then as I started really growing and learning to really get to know like mental health, it was really about the athlete's mental health first before performance. Yeah. Because think about it, we wrap ourselves in our identity, and this is we talked about the pressure of these kids, that these kids are like signing at 14 years old, and then they come to me and they're freezing at the plate, or they're saying they want to go D1, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're missing the boat. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying these people, like, dreams come true. It is. But the reality is we need to be more than just baseball players, right? Like, you guys as coaches, we all need to teach being a good human being, being likable, being sacrificing for your team, and talk about career and all that, Mm-hmm. It's not because we have to give them a space to trust themselves and to know that mistakes are going to happen.
And I can attest to that. Our team in particular, our 13U with the Tribe, is we don't have any D1 athletes, believe it or not, on that team, right? But they don't care, and they're such good buddies that when they go in, there's so much freedom when they play that they often overachieve. Like their mental literally makes up for the physical. They're flying around. It's almost like they don't know any better. Yeah. And so it's worked out for us.
Sure.
But, for instance, you guys, I was talking to Tony, Coach Tony, Jeffrey, Tetrad, and he said you guys played so well this weekend but in the last game, the mental let out, and you guys were tired, and it's probably just a learning process, right? You got to keep it up for 4 games. They always talk about it.
Well, getting gritty
What do you do to try to, or what are some techniques that you try to instill in your athletes so they can maintain that mental toughness all day, 4 or 5 games?
Oh my gosh! I mean, you have to have I call it a feeding frenzy. You know how like sharks and there's blood in there, and then all of a sudden the sharks attack. Like that's how it is mentally. Like I remember, like you have to have, like I was a shortstop and I'm pretty gritty. Okay, so like I would in my head I would like the harder you fucking hit it to me, the quicker your ass is out in first.
It's go.
Okay, and I would be like quick steps, balls of your feet moving. Like I was always talking smack in my head because it is tiring. You're out in the hot sun and Texas heat for game after game. Jake, my son's a catcher, and what I'm proud of him though is that like he'll catch like maybe he's now catching more and more like 3 games or in series. But when he's hauling his butt ass and backing up the first baseman when he's tired, then I know that I'm doing a good job as a parent.
Yeah.
When I am proud at that behavior right there as a catcher, that he falls to the wall, that's gritty. You have to compete all the time. And that's the problem is we spoil the shit out of our kids. Okay? We don't let them be gritty at home. Okay? So like, it's not just on the field. I tell parents, like, you need to foster grit at home. When those dishes aren't done at 10 o'clock at night and they're on dish duty chore, they need to do it when they're tired. Okay? They need to get it done when they're tired. They need to do things they don't feel like doing that. Because that is what makes champions. They have to fight when they're tired, not when things are all pretty.
Yeah. That's
true character right there. That's a true champion.
Yeah.
It's easy to when everything's going well. And I think going back to what you said about a minute ago, we were talking about damn, I went blank.
Well, mental
gritty
right
or tired. Like what when you're tired.
Yeah, but it's important to know too, just kind of like that confidence and just being gritty. That a lot of times, like a lot of these kids, especially like with the 13U team, like they are super young, right? So trying to get them to like mentally be a little bit more grown up is a challenge at times with that. But like what we as coaches will see whenever they're playing aggressive and we give them and they give themselves like the freedom to fail. That's when like everything amongst the team starts to sync up.
Yes.
Right? Like one guy may take 3 really good swings and strike out, but if 1 through 13 we're doing that collectively, like we're gonna hit the shit out of the baseball and we're gonna demoralize teams. And that's what we try and get them to understand, like from the team side is like, hey, like the more we do this, the more this team's going to beat the shit out of people, but the more you're going to have success.
Well, right. I mean, like the stuff I hear too, and this is like for parents, like when they're listening, is like, we got to control the controllables. And that's kind of what Julie's saying is like when she sees Nate like busting his ass down the line to back up first base on a ball in the infield when it's game 3, probably last inning, tired of shit, maybe losing, maybe winning, right? Maybe getting his ass kicked 100-0. But if he's still doing that, like that's controllable, right? Like that is 100% within his control, whether he's going to pout and feel sorry for himself, feel sorry for the situation, the team, sorry for his at-bats or how he's performed that game.
That's right.
Like that you put yourself in a spot to where if you have more than 3 or 4 guys on the team doing that, well, we're going to get our ass kicked. Your team is going to get its ass kicked. I don't give a shit if we go out there and we're playing a team that's kicking our ass 100-0, control the controllable.
That's
do what you can do. And that's what we've been talking with the 14s this year. The 13s haven't gotten as much because right now it's new to them, right? So like they're excited. It's new. It's a new team. We're winning some baseball games. We're competing well, so it's easy right now. This is currently, and honestly for the 13 team, it's easy for them to compete right now because we haven't faced a ton of adversity. We haven't been punched in the mouth day in and day out yet, whereas the 14s are right now. It's like, dude, look, when you're struggling, when you're getting, but as a team and individually, just getting it kicked in day after day, the only thing you can do is all you can do. And all you can do is control what you can control. And that comes down, like for us, it comes down to hustling on and off the field. Like we can sit here, I've got a list on my phone of 20 things that we wrote out to tell these guys, like, this is controllable.
Yep.
But just like you said, it's effort. That's all it is. It's like, do the things that you can put effort into, and the results will take care of themselves. Win or loss.
But if you're doing the same thing all the time, that creates consistency.
Absolutely.
And that's routines and it's effort. Routines and effort.
And to me, from playing and now the coaching perspective, being able to control the controllables regardless of the situation, right? Because a lot of guys, old and young, I played with guys in college where they struggle with it, where we're getting our ass kicked and then the effort starts to go down the window, right? But especially at this age, if we can ingrain that in these younger guys, regardless of what it is, by the time they're 16 and 17, that's when you start to see everything that come to fruition.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And they become really, really good players.
Yeah.
And really, really good things start to happen at that point.
Absolutely.
I also love what you said about kids doing dishes when they're tired, right? Like doing chores when it's inconvenient. Like we talk about this all the time because he'll get on the phone with me in the morning because we both will go to the gym in the morning, and I'll tell you, he'll ask me like, "How was your workout?" And I was like, "Well, I was being a little bitch today, so I punished myself on the treadmill a little bit more. Like, dude, I hate cardio. I fucking hate it. Like, I don't like running. Like, nobody likes running. I don't think anybody enjoys running.
Exactly.
But the reason I get on the treadmill and do it is because, like, for lack of a better phrase, I got to get the bitch out of me. Like, honestly, like, I got to get in there and, like, compete. Like, dude, and I learned that because, like, dude, when I would go and play in college baseball, dude, like, it was just, I didn't want to fail, you know? So, like, I've put a brick wall up instead of facing it. Like, dude, like, this is part of the game. It's part of.
It's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt. You're going to lose. You're going to win. Mm-hmm. You're going to fail and you're going to succeed. And so I like it because it's like, dude, we got to do things when we don't feel like doing them. We have to.
Yep.
And it's. I was saying about that. I had kind of a little epiphany of even my read this week. Is like, dude, that guy's been going and hitting every single day for the past 2.5 years, and it's so just repetitive. And you can't sit here and tell me not at one point, even for you, not at one point when you walked into that cage when it's late at night and you've already hit 4 times a week that you were psyched to get in there.
No,
you
for
probably
sure.
weren't. You probably hated your life for.
Damn, I'm hungry. I kind of want to go home and shower.
But you don't get to, man. Like to be great, and this is we talk to our teams all the time. Like this is all we preach on is like, dude, to be great, you got to do shit when you don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. You're not tired of it. Like you don't hate it so much that it's like you're resisting it. But there's gonna be days that you face that adversity. There's gonna be days that you face that you look at that thing in front of you and say, it'd be really fucking nice to be sitting on the couch watching Netflix right now.
Yeah, but at some point too, though, like I don't know at what day or what time frame this happens, but for me, like whenever I kind of flipped that switch, and when I was in high school, right, of starting to hit every day and kind of taking ownership of my career, at some point, like I noticed, like I just started doing it subconsciously. Right, because it becomes such a habit, whether it's like I had a long drive home, whatever it is, like you just go in there and do it because it becomes so much of who you are, like you don't even think twice about it, right? You just start to do it because it's like, well, I'm supposed to be here because I want to be really good at this, regardless of the circumstance, if I'm tired or if I'm not.
Do you think, and we can kind of dive into this and kind of get some of our questions answered, is like, do you think, because parents probably still force their kids to go do stuff.
Oh, that's a good question.
Does that, because I think parents need to hear this, that doesn't become habit if it's from somebody else outside of them, or does it? What do you think?
No, I think that's a really good question because I was thinking on the way here, I was thinking about this term motivation. Mm-hmm. It's a very complicated word, okay? Because motivation comes from every source. Everything around you is motivation. Our culture is motivational, right? Like, we didn't have phones growing up, and now phones are a big distraction, okay? So I think it becomes, like, to be great at anything on such a high level, I do think there has to be an internal drive of obsessiveness. Yeah. Like, someone just has to be kind of obsessed. Like, triathletes, for example, I don't know, they're a whole other page. I'd rather play baseball than run and jog, but there's, like, something about that person that they have to really want to. I think it's not the norm. I think the norm is we'd rather be on our couch watching Netflix. I really think that's kind of like we create a culture of convenience. Okay, so part of it is our culture saying, well, we have a remote control, we have things to make it easier for ourselves. You know, everything's convenience. We don't have to make dinner anymore. Yeah. You know, we can hire people to do things for us. So I think that becomes a problem. So I think that yes, as parents, like when my kids come home from school, and I let them have their phone for a little while. Oh, guys, why don't you take a break after school? That's a very slippery slope. Because I see them on the couch, they're on their freaking phones, they're on their little Instagram, and then all of a sudden they're caught up in this addiction. Okay, sorry, but it becomes an addiction. And then I have to say, okay, I'm turning off your phone, and they're yelling, Mama, why you turn on my phone? Because as soon as I turn off their phone, shit gets done.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're out hitting out there, they're doing their stuff,
Yeah.
they're present. So I do think that parents, we need to take better ownership that these kids need to be trained, and we need to instill better values, and we need to take control of our kids. And we need to cut off the phone and say, you know what, you only have an hour and a half or 2 hours. If you don't like it, tough. Stop having our kids like us. And say screw it, because things will get more done. So motivation is a cross-training process. It's liking your coaches is an issue, because if the kids don't like you, they're not going to want to work. If you don't like your parents, you're not going to want to work with them. You're going to like screw you, oppositional. So I do think that motivation has to come from the source of the kid, because I can tell them, like, you know what, guys, when you suck, okay, I have a hitting book for mental skills, right? And go hit. We have so many resources for kids that I could go on. You can go on YouTube. Years ago, we didn't have that. So there's really no excuses for today's kids. I'm sorry.
No.
No excuses.
There's none.
Dr. J, I wanted you to talk about, because you work across the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any athletes that you've worked with beginning at a young age who have like developed into an elite athlete? And is there a singular trait or mental aspect that they have that can't be taught, or is it, or are we all able to develop that?
Well, that's a good question. Okay, because I suck in music and I suck in math. Like am I going to be good at math? Am I going to be good at fixing things? The answer probably is no. I'm not born with that. I was born naturally with eye-hand coordination. Okay, so any type of sport. So yes, I picked a sport that kind of matches for me. But I do think that if you have decent or average coordination, I don't know about that, because you see some of these kids that are just like pretty awesome, and you see them like they're going to go far.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how far? Well, I think then it becomes with like LeBron James says, well, hard work beats talent any given day. I do think you have to have good coordination, because like we all know visual tracking is everything. Okay, you can have the best swing in the world, but if you go out there and whiff, then your eyes have been checked, and you keep whiffing, can that be taught? Yes, you could do some visual tracking, but you really need to have exceptional eye-hand coordination. So I do think I do think people are born with natural gifts, but then obviously you have to kind of work at things over and over again. So to enhance my visual tracking, I had a ball in my hand. So I was like outside throwing a ball, and as a kid I remember throwing against the garage, and I would always see it in my hand. I didn't read about it, I just would always watch it, and I was always watching it. So I think I was working on certain things. But what do you guys think about natural gifts versus motivation?
I think still at this age though, it's the same thing that you said. Like there's some guy, you're gonna see the athletes. Like that's just the biggest thing. Like we can see an athlete. We like to describe it as output. Like just in terms like when we start watching people, we come to a tryout. Like I've even had conversations with kids that we've not taken on our team, but they'll go out there and they'll show some good stuff. And I'm just like, look, like right now this isn't like you're not gonna really get to play here. Like you're just not good enough yet, but there's something there. Like if you put some effort into it, it could definitely be there. And so like for us, it's like we just look at like the ability for guys to be explosive. Like that's the first piece, and it's correlated to the kid. And like we can see a kid that's smaller versus a guy that's bigger, and be like, okay, that kid that's smaller has a ton of bat speed compared to his size and where he's at. So like when he hits puberty, like when he starts to get a little bit bigger, like that's gonna play. There's some good stuff there. Right. Versus like a bigger and stronger kid that's like, yeah, he's hitting the shit out of the baseball, but like he rotates slow. He can't get to the baseball very well. He's like cheating out in front. Yeah, you can cheat out front when it's 50 miles an hour straight at you, 50 pitches a game. Mm-hmm. But when you start seeing 92 in this, like that's going to be hard to hit. And so like being able to notice that type of stuff. And I think is, in my opinion, right now, I think it's also because we're so young in what we've done. Like we really haven't done anything yet. Like we're nowhere close to where we think we're going to be in the next 5 or 10 years. But like the biggest thing is like I think that everything is developable right now because of exactly what you said. There are so many resources out there. A kid can change his life if he really wants to. Myree's a prime example.
I think
totally.
I think it all comes back to everything you were just saying. Like a lot of it is right. Obviously, at some point, like the physical the physical is important. Like, let's not lose sight of that. It's important to have an efficient swing, right? But at the end of the day, like, the kid's got to want it. Kids got to have an internal motivation to want to get out there and want to do it. Because especially with these 13s, and I've made comments to the 14s, like, they're fixing to go into high school come fall, right? And they're about to get hit come next spring with more baseball than they've ever had. Practices every single day, 2, 3, 4 games a week, right? And that's a tremendous workload, right? So if you don't want it and you don't enjoy and you don't love being out there, then it becomes very hard to keep growing and getting better.
Especially nowadays, because the gap is just going like this. Like, and you can make different reasons for why, but the gap just keeps getting spread apart. Like the good guys are separating themselves, and the bad ones are just like getting pushed to the bottom. And you can see it. It's happening right in front of our eyes. Like, we can just see it happen. It's like, man, and the funny thing is, most of the guys that are at the bottom is not for the lack of physical ability. It's the lack of, like, just give a shit. Like, they don't care as much. Their mom and dad want it more than they do. Their mom and dad want it, and that's what I was asking a second ago. Is like, can a parent really instill, like, drive, or at some point, like, they can, but at some point the kids got to decide.
Oh yeah, I mean that's you answered your question. The kids have to want it. You know, as much as I love baseball, and it would have been so fun to play professional, I think we all would agree how great it would be to make a living off it. You know, I have realized as a parent and as a woman, like, I had to pick a career at 18. You know, I had to feed myself. My parents were cutting me off when I was 22. So I've already know psychologically that I've already am retiring my children from being an athlete. Okay, so what I mean by that is, and the parents need to listen, you need to retire your kid from being an athlete competitively. College, pro, like, it is not about your dream. Yeah. Like, you may have thought how great you are, and only if I would have had my parents pushing me or I hadn't quit, that you think you're going to be playing for the Yankees. Yeah. But I'm sorry, because the kids feel your vibe. When you're overly attached to them, they know it, and they're playing for you, and they're going to play. They're going to play fear of failure. They're going to play fear of losing your love unconditionally, and I've come to terms with that. Kobe Bryant, there was an interview with Kobe with a long time ago, and Kobe says, you know, I wasn't very good when I was 10 or 11. Like, there was a game, and they're like, what? And he's like, no, at 10 or 11, like, I barely scored any points. And I went to my dad, and I said, Dad, man, I'm struggling. He goes, Kobe, I love you the same whether you score 0 points or 50 points. And Kobe said in the interview that gave me so much freedom. He goes, that when he said that to me, it was like, wow, like, I can just play and just be who I am, and then I'll score 60 on you. Yeah. You know, of course, he said competitively. So that's the key. So like I've already talked to my kids about career all the time. You know, like Jacob, he says he wants to be a surgeon. You know, he loves like with his hands. He's really good at, you know, things. Even as a baby, he would pick up his little pacifier in his mouth. I'm like, he's really good in fine motor coordination. And I said, Jacob, like, if you go to college and you decide that, you know, baseball is taking up all your time, because you can't get those grades back. Like, your transcripts when you are permanent. Okay, withdrawal, everything is shown on your transcript. And we know that in order to be a surgeon, you have to have pretty much straight A's your whole life. Yeah. And if he goes, Mom, like, I'm not playing sports in college because I really want to focus on that. Would I be disappointed if my kid said I don't want to play sports anymore? Of course I would. Like, there's nothing better than watching your kids play. But this is not my dream. This is my kid's life.
Yes.
So I think the message is retire now. Retire, people. Because if you're going to go, it's going to be because of them. Yeah. And, right?
You know, yeah. So, and it's funny, my son played a game a couple weeks ago, and he was like, I'd never seen him so beat up after a loss. And I told Garrett, like, I don't know what to tell him. Like, he's never cared before, like this, you know. Like, yeah. And so I told him, I said, hey, bub, you know, like, I don't know what to tell you, but I just hope that you know, like, I love baseball. I love watching you play. We love supporting you. But I love you no matter what. Like, no matter what happens, like, I don't, and he smiled. And I was like, you know, I feel that way, but he may have not even known that. So I think now, you know, the Yankees call, I guess. I'm kidding.
But then after a conversation with Kobe, I even went to Nate that night.
Yeah.
And I said, I just want to tell you again, because you'd be disappointed a little bit if I quit. I go, I'm human. I go, I love watching you excel. I like watching you having fun. Yeah. But when you're hating something, that's not fun for me either.
Yeah.
You know? And it's okay. It's your life at the end of the day. You know, and you have to be, yes, size, quickness. There's so many variables. Let's go in another one. A lot of people with overuse injuries. I know we're getting another scale.
Oh, yeah,
I just interviewed a guy for my podcast, and he said he played like a whole year with the minors with a broken arm. And I'm thinking, what is going on? Like what are we missing, people with injuries? And, you know, and I think we need to rest our bodies a little bit, especially because you guys said when you hit high school, it's full on. Oh. And so I am kind of like, that's one thing about our team with the Lobos is TJ is very cautious. Like he is not, if you're hurt, he'll sit you. He'll sit. We have some injured guys. He goes, you're not pitching. Like some guys are clear to pitch. He's like, no, you're not. Because he does see long term. You know, he sees future. And same with me. Like I don't want my kids every single day grinding out because I want them to peak when I know in high school they're gonna abuse their bodies in high school.
Well,
what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean that's even for us. Like some of these parents want to play like 15 tournaments in the spring. I'm like, bro, like what are you playing for? And like we've said it before, but like Coach Hallmark even said, like you got to value the win. You got to value the win, and you like if we over. At some point, like kids gonna get fat and lazy if you just keep giving them what they want, and like if they want to play more, like I want them hungry. Like I want them showing up to the field hungry to play because they haven't played in a couple weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, but some of these teams, some of these parents, like we don't do it, but like I'll have lessons and parents are like, yeah, like this will be our 4th tournament in a row in a weekend. Like we're pumped, and I'm like, bro, you're not excited. Stop. Like, and the kid probably hates it. Because like we used to do that when I was a kid.
Well, that's what happens.
Honestly,
like,
I hate
you start to burn out.
You burn out. That's a great.
I don't even know if it's burnout, but like it's just more so. It's not even burnout. Healthy. It's not burnout. It's more so like, in my eyes, it's more so like you just gave him too much of the thing. Like there's no stimulus there. So it's not that he doesn't not like the sport. He's just there's a burn there.
Conditioned.
You've gotten conditioned to the stimulus, so it's not like fired up, ready to go. It's kind of like tie my shoes. Mm-hmm. Grab my bag.
In
any good organization, like for parents listening, any good organization, your coach should have, like if you ask them about that, they should be able to tell you why. You know, and that's critical. And the ego, I think, of some of these travel ball coaches, you know, is bigger.
You're right.
And they're throwing 100, kids are throwing 120. It's like in a pool game? Like, come on, like, you know, a kid's got to play tomorrow.
I think it's important too, like from the coaching perspective to understand like what's important now.
Yes.
Right? Like with these 13 and 14s, like we were talking about it, like especially this 13U team, the big thing that our goal was when we brought them on, because they were so new, was just getting them used to our system. Mm-hmm. Getting them used to the verbiage, getting them used to how we do things. Right? Because again, like I've said it before and I'll say it again, like no one's getting signed right now. You're not getting drafted in June at 13 and 14 years old.
And if they do, it's for the wrong reason. Exactly.
It's
not right.
Even though there's coaches in this area telling 13-year-olds they have scouts looking at them.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not. You just got to understand.
If you get told that your kid at 13 is getting looked at by a scout, you need to leave that place.
You need to leave it, and it's not the best interest of the child anyways.
It's a lot.
Yeah, that's called
captain.
You're
putting way too much pressure on that poor kid.
You said it perfectly a minute ago. Like the goal for us is that we want, and I said this before on one of our podcasts. There was a dad that was talking to my dad when I was playing on the 12 growing up, and he said a great phrase, and it stuck with me for forever. And he said, you know, we all want our kids to be really good at 12 and 13. He goes, but what good does it do us if they're the best 12 or 13-year-old, but by the time they get to 16 and 17, they're not worth the shit.
Or they don't want to play anymore.
Exactly. Like, right? Like, you want to, like you said, build that stimulus by the time they're 16 and 17. They're peaking at the right time to get them to wherever they want to go.
Right. And that's sacrificing for today. And no one wants to sacrifice everything in instant gratification. And we live in a fear rat race culture. It's the newest iPhone. Everyone wants to look pretty now. Everyone has the best, right? But we're not really seeing that what really matters is the psychology of it. This is all psychology, right? This is all about, it's about sacrifice. It's about long term. It's about, you know, like getting my doctorate wasn't easy. Like I had to take a million classes and a million professors and a million suck it up in order to get to that result. You know, my parents didn't pay for it. It was difficult. Everything in life you have to sacrifice at the beginning for the long term. For anything in life. So you guys are right.
I mean, I think that comes down to like the what versus the why. Like going to college baseball should be the what. Like that should happen because of your why. Like the why can't be the end result. I shouldn't play baseball for the why. I should play baseball for a bigger purpose. I shouldn't do anything in life because of what, but what's my why behind it, right?
It's the most powerful word in the dictionary, in my opinion. Because, again, it goes back to everything we were saying, 5-10 minutes ago about on those days you really want to go home and watch Netflix when you've been hitting 5-6 days in a row. If your why is powerful enough and you're bought into that, that's what's going to create that consistent habit over time.
Yep. But it's also passion. It's passion and fun. Okay? So then you get in a whole other category of coaching, right? Because you get into we're going now into the coaching and the motivation also. Because the old school philosophies, too, like you hear coaches yelling at the kids for making a physical mistake, right? Is that going to be helpful? That's only going to, if they're getting yelled at for mistakes by their parents and their coaches and their teammates, that can destroy their motivation and create more performance anxiety. And then if they're playing long term and they're playing in the minors, for example, and they have asset coaches who are jerks or, there's a lot of things that foster. So I think we need to create an avenue of intensity. Like I'm all for that. Like get on my kid. But also be positive. Like when they make a great freaking effort in like a diving play, even if they don't catch it, like I was proud of Nate. He was playing third and there was a hot smash at third and he dove full out for it. He missed it, but I was so proud. I was like, oh, like that. Because that effort, I'm like, one day he's going to catch that shit.
Yeah.
Anything close, you dive, It's like the effort and that grit, know? So, but coaches need to also praise effort and they have to, it's long-term fun. And I think under the age of 12, the number one reason why kids drop out of baseball in Little League, at least the research shows, is because of horrible coaching. Yeah. We have to do better. This is a whole issue. I'm actually writing a book. Yeah. We got to do better as coaches.
100%.
We are ruining our kids. The coaches have so much time with these kids, and we can do so much more if we care a little more,
That's what we pride ourselves on, man, is like player retention. Like I wish that for the moment a kid walks in at 13, we're going to keep them all the way through 17 years old, 18 years old, because that's like, I saw a tweet the other day, it was about Little League, but Little League coaches should pride themselves on not how many games they won, but how many kids signed up on from his team to play the next year, right? And it's the same thing with us, is like, I want those guys back. Now, at some point for us, like we want to be competitive and we want to be select. So if the guy's effort, if his controllables are not there and he doesn't control that and he's a bad apple in the bunch or the fit just isn't right, like we're going to let them go because we don't want to hinder them. Like at the end of the day, it's hindering the guys on the team, but it's also hindering them. So it's not a, hey, I hate you or hey, we have beef. It's more so like, hey, dude, like, this just isn't the spot. Like, you're not growing here.
Yeah.
And so kind of switching avenues. Like, I want people to be able to hear, like, from you, and you don't have to go all the way into it, but, like, you talk a little bit of routine, talk a little bit of, like, hey, and we can even just do it on a whole scale of baseball. It doesn't really have to correlate to pitcher or hitter, even though there's intricacies there that are probably different.
Absolutely.
Like for you, because I know for myself, that was the biggest thing that I learned towards the end of college was like, because I went to we talked about that. I went to some sports psychology. I went to a guy in Boulevardy and worked with him a little bit. And that's a lot of what we talked about, routine and knowing how to flush it and knowing how to find your focal point in the stadium and, red light, green light, yellow light. For you, like, just, like, on a whole scale, like, you start talking to a kid, for these kids that are listening, like, when guys are struggling or even doing good, like, what should routine look like and what does that mean? It could be on a weekly scale or just, like, a daily scale, like, in-game. Like, if you had a spot that you were like, hey, I would note this, what type of routine kind of would you build? And it doesn't have to be, like I said, it doesn't have to be super detailed, but, like.
Yeah, well, so obviously in sports psychology, everyone talks about, pre-shot routines, pre-game routines. Yes, I'll go into all that. But I think the biggest thing is what happens after the mistake. Okay, so I'm going to lead with that one because the number one issue that I see, the two biggest issues is performance anxiety or fear of failure right? And making a mistake and what happens after the mistake. That's after losing a game. How do people bounce back from losing a game? How do people bounce back from being 0 for 3? How do people bounce back from missing a routine error? So that's the issue. In mental health, it's people get sad after something, okay, which is like a little bit like depression. And then confidence. Your self-esteem and your self-worth is everything. So how do you bounce back from failure and your confidence are two of the most important ingredients other than your focus and your follow-through. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I created this. It's called, the post-mistake routine is called AIM. Because if you do what I'm asking, you're going to aim better and hit your target afterwards. So you accept a mistake for what it is, which is you neutralize that error immediately. You neutralize it by accepting it. You see what you can do to fix it, and then you move on and you flush it. So I sometimes have my athletes have like AIM on their hands, just because it's like it helps them to figure it out. But it's like I tell like pitchers, I work with a lot of pitchers in our community, like D1, I got St. Mary's, UTSA, Trinity pitchers, top pitchers. They don't have routines enough. They don't have a bullpen routine. Like, what are you guys thinking? Like, no one's teaching these guys. These guys should be so much better even at the higher levels, right? But I tell them, be prepared. I just had a conversation with a pitcher. Be prepared to get a bomb hit off you in the first inning. Because if you're prepared for all of it, it's all good. You just accept
Absolutely.
it. Be prepared for everything. So everything needs to be addressed at the beginning. And it happened, actually. How did you deal with it? I struck 5 people out in a row. Boom. That's the mental game. Because shit's going to happen, people. Yeah. You're going to get bombs, right? So it's very important to have a routine after everything. And even like when you do something well, you have to know what you did well. So like coaches should not always giving the answers all the time to players. They should ask. So athletes are on they're by themselves out there. So they need to evaluate, what did I do well? What can I work on all the time? And it's not fixing things in games. It's adjusting. It's making adjustments. So that's very important. Obviously, like I tell my kids, listen, I'm paying a lot of money and sacrificing a lot of time. You need to work on your visual. So I make them visualize before games. Oh my God, I turn off their shit. Get off your electronics. They hear it all the time. And they're okay. And they're starting, what's really cool is they're closing their eyes. Because every champion sees things before they happen. They visualize it. They see themselves in the uniform. We talk all about that. The law of attraction. It totally works. It's not hokey. The shit works. Whatever you feed yourself here is what's going to come out. Yep. You're increasing the likelihood of it coming out. I'm not going to say it's magical, but everything that I've envisioned has happened because I literally visualize myself having twins.
I spend 15
twins.
I spend 15 minutes every morning. Yeah. Every morning before I start anything, I visualize everything. We built the vision wall at the office in the house. It's got like everything that we want. Pictures, like clear as day, goals written out in bold, like this is what we want. And before I do shit of the day, like that is the first thing that I look at, and I sit there for 15 minutes. And like the guy that I started listening to was Andy. We talked about it a little bit on your podcast, but Andy Frisella from the MF CEO podcast, he owns First Form. He talked about that, and I was in junior college at the time, and I just tore my UCL. Like I'm screwed, right? Like I feel like I'm in the pits.
Yeah.
And this guy started talking about visualization, law of attraction. I'm like, dude, this is some hokey, like you said, it's some hokey shit.
Legit, you buy into it though, like it will
change. And I started doing it.
Absolutely.
I started doing that, and I was like, holy crap,
it works.
Like everything that I'm doing right now, like it was like, I've literally seen like, we talked about a podcast, and I visualized a podcast 6 months before we even visually did it. Like,
so I kind of want to go down this rabbit hole now, because you talked about like the visualization, because to me that was the one thing within my career that completely not only changed my career as a baseball player, but changed my life. Going into my junior year, I was everything that you said kind of in your career is like there's more. I just got to figure out how to get more out of myself, right? So going into my junior year, I got a little Sharpie pen, Expo marker, whatever, wrote down all the goals that I had for the season. Right? Hit 300, 5 home runs, whatever, 4.0 GPA. Without fear of failure, without fear of anything in return, I just set out, stayed on that mission to compete and accomplish those. Mm-hmm. Didn't look at the numbers throughout the year at all, right? End up getting hurt, tear the back of my labrum, completely destroyed it. Come home from the conference tournament, immediately walk in the bathroom to draw my stuff off, look at the goals, and everything that I had written down, I had achieved throughout that year.
It's powerful.
Right? So, like, I tell guys all the time, right? Like,
yeah,
you can have everything here, right? But it's very, very hard unless you're seeing that every day. Because we had a sports psychologist that we worked with when I was in high school, and that was the biggest thing he said. He was like, whatever you want to achieve in life, in this game, whatever it is, you've got to be able to write that down and put it somewhere that you're going to see it every single day.
Absolutely.
So what's kind of your take on that? Do you?
Oh, yeah. There's a book called The Success Principles, and I've been reading it. All I do is read sports. I'm a sports psychology, mental toughness guru. I mean, it's all I read. In that book, it talks about, it's one thing that separates it is to visualize it, but actually put it out on paper and write it and make it and put it out there. It's everything is a magnet to you. Yep. You know, it talked about like when you're younger, visualize yourself. So he had a party of like teenagers who wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or an MLB player, and they threw the party and they all dressed up in their outfits that they would do in 15 years or whatever. That's and they cool. all came in, and they all stepped into it and made it a reality.
Oh, I love that.
So
that's
yes,
awesome.
that it works. You know, it really does, and the power of the mind is so important that when you're healing, you can actually see. You know, I see your bones coming together and healing and seeing the calcification of your bone. It works. It's crazy how powerful it is. So why not feed yourself with unstoppable positivity?
Yeah, and if it doesn't work, at the end of the day, like positive people
You're happier.
are positive people. Yeah, like even no matter what's going on, like even if you attract that to you, like you're gonna walk out to the baseball field, you're gonna walk out of anything that you do with like just energy to do it. Instead of this like, I don't know, just like defeated look on your face.
Where would you start,
Yeah.
right? So if you're working with an athlete,
Right.
college, 15, 16, however old they are, where would you start with that?
Okay, great question. So like if I had someone come to my office.
'Cause I think this is important
It
for
is.
the kids and the parents so they
Right.
can help the application process of that
Right.
at home.
Well,
as
first of all, it's the buy-in. Okay, that's the number one thing is that we need to stop with this mental health, physical health. Mental health is everything related to being a human being. It's confidence, it's communication, it's visualization, it's positivity, it's life is sports psychology, right? Mm-hmm. So number one, there shouldn't be any shame. Okay, we're gonna have breakups. We're gonna lose our dogs. We're gonna miss our moms. We're gonna struggle with drinking too much. I mean, we're all humans. There's nothing to be ashamed of for that. So I really think that, so when people ask me, the earlier they come in, the better. Like I'm there, like you want to keep someone in your organization. So I want to keep someone like knowing that whatever they go through in life, like they can tell me. And that's what makes it so cool is that they can say, I'm struggling with this issue. I'm struggling with that. So at a young age, I say, just bring them in so they have that comfort because it's all trust. So if people come in and are, Dr. J, you're kind of cool. I'm like, yeah, I'm just a human being. Have a conversation with you. Like, you know, like we're going to meet your needs. We're going to meet your needs, like wherever you are. But being with them from 9 and seeing themselves grow in college, I had a 15-year-old soccer player, and I knew she was going to come back years later, played soccer at a D1 level, came back at 26 years old, and now we're working on a whole other issues, not just really the sports, but just life and career, you know, so it's very magical. But when an athlete comes to my office, I like to give them their why, like an assessment without the parents, right? So that they fill out a form, and the number one thing is rank the top 5 reasons why you're doing this sport that you're in. I want to know their why. If I see winning or scholarships too, it tells me some different things. It's just information gathering. It's a way for them to calm down and kind of understand what we're going to talk about. What are the pressure? Who's putting pressure on you? 1 to 5. Mom, dad, significant other, friends, self, whatever it is. And if I see 5s, then I target it. But I tell parents, like, listen, we are all a team. Like, don't put me on this pedestal. Like, I'm here. I have a role. Lay off your kids at the end of the game. I'm going to train them mentally to give them their homework assignments. You just be a supportive parent. And if parents have a hard time with it, we talk about it. Because I'm not perfect too, you know? So everyone has to kind of accept their role. And then we just have a conversation and we talk about if it's hitting, for example, like I make them read a hitting book because they need to do more outside than just coming to see me.
For sure.
I make kids read. Kids don't want to read.
I think that's important too.
They don't want to train.
You can't expect and that's what we tell guys from the physical side is like you can't expect like your hour and a half with us to hit a week is gonna propel you to where you want to go.
Right. And same thing, mental skills are like physical skills. They're on and off. You have to beat it until it becomes automatic. And that takes years, right? It takes years for us to get to a level of being positive all the time and gritty all the time. You know, when I was a kid, I I was dealing with my own struggles of being distracted at the plate, and learning to embrace distractions is a big one. Learning how to, someone says you suck and just ignore it and hit a bomb, because life is about constant distractions, So what other questions?
Do you kind of dive into the same thing, kind of going back to routines we talked about a minute ago?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the top college programs that we look at and stuff around the country, they'll have their guys develop routines.
Yeah,
Jim Schlossnagle's a big one.
Yeah.
How do you go about leading guys in the right direction to where they can develop their own routine?
That's right.
So find their own focal points and stuff like that.
So hitters and pitchers are a perfect example, because we're here, great coaches aren't here to make them like us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So whatever works for you is what you need to do. I'm here to just bring it out, So for example, when they're in the hole, what are they doing in the dugout? First of all, to get all the knowledge they can. What are all the details? I tell my son, they're giving away answers all the time.
Absolutely.
If you're not studying, you're not looking, you're missing key. You're not studying. I know I'll talk about the routine, but they should be studying the umpire strike zone. If this, and it was interesting, that umpire came up to me earlier and I loved it. He goes to me, I didn't say one, I was just sitting there doing Game Changer. He goes, hey, I'm like, hey, how's it going? In the middle of the game. He goes, I like to keep a big strike zone at the beginning. And so then I close it up if I need to, whatever. But he goes, and he had his own little version of it. But the athletes need to know that if he's calling them 3 inches wide, off the plate, then you need to be coming closer. But they need to know that, so that the athletes need to be very detailed with everything they do. Always have a purpose. But the same thing in the hole. What are they doing in the hole? What are they doing on deck? So they have their routine. Are they, their timing? Maybe they're working on something, a physical cue they're thinking of. And then what are they doing? I'm a big believer in the deep breath. So I interviewed Matt Adams. Matt Adams played for the Cardinals, the Washington Nationals. I interviewed him on my podcast. And he got called up to the majors. And I asked him on the podcast, I said, Matt, I'm like, are you shitting in your pants? He was like, yeah. So he got called up and he had to fly with his agent. He flew from to the Dodgers for his first game of his whole career was in Dodger Stadium. How cool is that, right? LA Dodgers.
Amazing.
So I'm like, were you nervous, man? He's like, yes, I was nervous. He goes, my heart rate was beating out of my chest. Very normal. I'm like, oh my, debut. He cried with his parents. I'm like, what did you do? He goes, well, I went back to my routine. For him, his routine was, and I always talk about it, the 3 to 5 second breath is a real true deep breath. It's not, it's a 3 to 5 second hold. Because it slows your heart rate down. It slows everything down. When you're nervous, everything speeds up, right? Everything speeds up. So he did this 3 to 5 second hold, and he said, you got this. So he had his mantra every time. So his deep breath, you got this. And then what else happened? He goes, when I go out to the plate, what is your routine? Well, I'm a yes hitter, right? So if that, and what is your pitch? I always tell people that you need to know your favorite pitch to hit. If you don't know your pitch, not many people know what their favorite pitch is. Even the major league players don't even know. His favorite pitch is, down the middle, a little inside, whatever. He's a lefty hitter. He said, first pitch, I'm going to go to my routine. The first pitch is good. I'm going to take it. Aggressive style hitting. He was nervous. He went back to his aggression. First pitch of his whole major league career, down, base hit right up the middle, which is actually perfection, right? Is up the middle. So he just lined it right up the middle. He took a deep breath. He got it out of his system. So having a routine is important, like you said, in any circumstances. So it's finding the routine that works for that hitter in their style. And if they have a routine and they fall back on it, they're going to have a lot more consistency. And I always say, Derek Jeter was interviewed or Albert Pujols was interviewed. If you're 0 for 6, they don't change anything.
Yeah.
They don't change anything. They're just as confident every freaking pitch and every single time.
And I think that's important to know too, from the player perspective. And I tell guys, and again, it's tough getting some of these dudes at this age to buy into this stuff. But it's at some point, you're going to develop this routine. It's going to go great. You're going, wow, this shit works. It's a winter wonderland, right? And then you're going to get hit with an 0 for 4 game. And then they're going to want to abandon everything.
And then fix their swing.
Right? So that's important to know, too. Exactly. It's regardless, good, bad, or indifferent, you've got to be able to stick with the routine.
Well, baseball is a roller coaster ride. It's the bottom line. You're going to go 4 for 4 one game and 0 for 6 the other. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Is you can't read into it. You can't. You can't make it about you. It's baseball. It's going to happen, and you have to have the consistent mindset and the I don't care, I don't give a shit mindset. Like if you line out, I don't care. I know that's easier said than done, but the people who care too much are the ones that have problems. Look at the golf course.
Yep.
You hit the ball in the water, who cares? You know? Accept it.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to
Don't look
change
at me.
it and be
Don't
all
look at me.
angry.
I didn't-
You know, but that very accepting mindset is hard when you want it so bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing, is that you want it so bad, you get angry because you're emotional and you're competitive, but you have to learn to let it go. So everything is a routine. What do you do after is a routine? You know, preparing a pitcher, you know, when they're struggling, they have a focal point or a reset button, whatever you want, whatever the athlete does is my job is to bring it out. But just having a calm, surgeon-like mentality when they perform. You know, they're gritty, but they let it go. Because then you can bounce back quicker when you're like that.
Yeah, I read recently that, you know, Steph Curry is wearing a whoop or something that was tracking his heart rate, and you know his heart rate's so high throughout the game, but when he shoots, it drops because he's got like a routine, you know, in his mind in that moment. He's prepared and you know, he does well. So kind of like plays into
or free throw.
Yeah, and so anyway, so we've almost gone an hour. It's been a great podcast. I mean, I think we could do this all day, but we've got to end it here soon. Wanted to ask you, okay, we've talked about the mental aspect of it. What can parents do to find that help? Like, where can they go? I know they can come see you. You know, what are some resources? Outline that for us, because I think that's a really important takeaway from this particular.
Yeah, I mean, there's books everywhere, but I think the difference between, again, is the parent can't be the sports psychologist and making their kids read or whatever. So I do think that all you do is literally go to sports psychologists in San Antonio and you can find me, you know. But I do think it's so worth everyone agreeing that it's so worth the investment. Okay, you're spending countless dollars on these select organizations. A freaking pair of shoes costs as much as a session nowadays. Yeah. It's nuts. They're getting so much training, and I tell people, like, you're going to spend the same amount for an hour with me than you are with a pair of shoes. Yeah. Okay? But my stuff lasts forever. Yeah. You know, it's an investment. And if you're not putting it into it, you're not going to get out. So I think the mental game is the most important part of the game. Obviously, their technique. But if they don't have it mentally, then people are wasting you're wasting money on everything else.
Amen.
If you can't be gritty and resilient and want it and be motivated. So people can find me very easily on the
I have one more question before we cut it out. Do you talk with athletes at all about like writing things down in game?
So yes. So what I do is I have athletes journal after games. Like, they have them evaluate. So, like, what do they do well mentally? What do they do well technically? So, gain up self-awareness. Mm-hmm. What can I improve on mentally? What can I improve on technically? So, they have that awareness. But also, like, in the game, either they can jot it down or they can do it mentally. But, yeah, they write it down because then it fuels their next goals, right? What they're going to work on in practice. So, then it fuels their practice goals. So, if they're really struggling, let's say that it could be their swing. You know, I'm not feeling it today, or I need to work on my backhand or whatever. Then they bring it to the games. So, yes, I do think it's important to jot things down.
It gives them some direction.
It's called a performance journal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We talk about that with a lot of guys, and it's actually some stuff that me and him had talked. I think probably something when we get into the fall, like, we're going to mandate it. Like, we have guys do that for that reason, because it's going to force them. Because, again, like, we'll talk to some guys, like, what's your approach off this guy based off of your last at-bat? And they're like, well, I have no idea. Well, that's a problem.
They're not aware. Mm-hmm. They're not mentally training.
Just to give, and I think that's important too. Just giving that self-awareness and giving yourself some sense of direction.
Well, I want to lead by what you guys are doing is great, because I really wish more and more people bought into the mental side and actually did what we're talking about. Because it's very lonely in the city of San Antonio, to be quite honest. Yeah. I feel like I'm being underutilized. I don't think sports psychology is being respected enough, our profession.
I agree.
It's so valuable, but it's just not. And it's crap. And we need more people like you guys to actually buy in, because parents and I can't do it all. You know, it's you guys are spending so much time, but in order for it to become habit, it has to be from the leadership. Yeah. If you make it, they're going to be forever grateful, and they're going to see the results. Mm-hmm. So I love it that you guys brought me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are doing
is there anywhere that people can follow you on?
Yeah, your podcast.
Oh, yeah. Facebook, Texas Center for Sports Psychology on Facebook. And then my podcast will be released in about a week or 2 weeks. And I have the St. Louis Cardinals scout is going to talk about scouting. I have the sports psychology consultant for the Astros. He was with them when they won the World Championships. I got Matt Adams. I got Garrett. I got TJ Green, another coach. I have parents.
Nice.
So I want us to have it. I think that this has been great.
Yes.
Parents can call me and they need help. It's really hard parenting nowadays, you know? So, they can find me on Facebook or my webpage.
Well, awesome. Thank you very much.
You.
And
Thank you, guys.
we'll see you guys next
Thank
time.
you guys.
Thank you.